Kid bullies my friend's brother so he see r asterisk ps in his pillow, by user Solon Falls. So this isn't my story, but it does deserve to be told her at least once. Thanks to r// on YouTube for making me want to put this here. I've got this friend who has always been, questionable. We'll call him Jack. Jack rides that line of being just good enough of a person to not be considered a bad guy. He is moldable so to speak, and he molds himself to fit in with whatever group of friends he's with at the moment. He's been to jail before, slept around enough every girl in the area avoids him like the plague, loves his alcohol a little too much, and has gotten into enough bar fights that he's banned from half of the bars he's been to. But he's hilarious and fun to be around, he's very loyal and trustworthy, and he's a fantastic handyman. He's a good guy deep down. The issue is he's just not the sharpest knife in the drawer. You give him an option between a good choice and a fun choice and he'll pick the fun choice every single time, no matter how bad it is. So over a decade ago, when Jack and I were in middle school, we'd go to youth camp over the summers. My parents are pretty religious and Jack always made my mother a bit uneasy. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she always worried about his future and that he'd get into more trouble than he could handle. Jack and I had been friends since 3rd grade and his home life was really rough so mom felt pretty responsible for him to some degree. Prior events like him paintballing cars and hitting people's mailboxes off their posts with bats, he was a hellion around his high school friends, had especially made my mom worried about him. She was afraid he was gonna be in jail before he was out of high school. Youth camp and church were ways she could keep an eye on him and also try to instill some good morals I guess. Now Jack also had a little brother whom we'll call John. John is important to this story as he's the whole reason this happened. John went with us to youth camp this year for the first time. Jack was really excited for his brother to go with us and wanted to show him everything as this was the 3rd or 4th time for him and he loved camp dearly. So, we got there early, 10 a.m., got signed in, and after getting our bags to our cabins, Jack and John are off. I don't exactly remember where or what I was doing but I know I left the room for a while after I got myself settled in. I always kept a lock on my backpack where all my snacks were and for good reason. Food thieves were an ever-present threat here. Unfortunately, John had been warned of this but didn't listen. In the time I was gone, one of the other campers came in the room, got into John's bag and stole a few things. We didn't find out until about 7 p.m. that night when we had about an hour of free time. Introductions had already been made so we knew the names of the other campers and while we tried to search for his missing snacks, we couldn't find them. We let the counselors know and an hour or so later, still nothing. At this point, they were likely gone and we knew it. We had a miniature meeting at 9 p.m. to inform campers no stealing would be tolerated and then we were sent to bed. Normally, this kind of thing would be escalated as you'll read later, but considering it was just day 1 I think they just wanted to let us off with a warning. Of course, John was pretty upset but Jack, my brother, who is John's age, and I split of a few of our snacks to him and the theft was soon forgotten. The next day, camp really began and that was when this kid from a different room started bullying John. Jack and John to this day are big guys but John was always a little less muscle and more chunk. The kid was picking on him for his weight and my brother saw it and informed Jack and I. Both of us were angry and told the counselors. The kid gets talked to, but doesn't quit. The next day it happens again. Only this time, he also swiped one of John's bag of chips that Jack had given him while commenting that he always knew the fat kids had the best snacks. John is mad but unlike Jack, John is a big softie. However, Jack saw this go down this time and then came to inform me and my brother. It's not very often I see Jack truly angry but when he is the guy who pissed him off normally ends up with a bloody nose and black eyes. But this time, Jack doesn't want to fight. If he gets in a fight, he'll most likely get kicked out of camp and he knows it. We talked about it for a few minutes and I could tell the gears were turning in his head. I asked if we were gonna involve the counselors and Jack said that was a useless idea. We don't have any evidence and while some people saw it, talking to the kid clearly isn't going to work. I agree then ask what the plan is. It's about 11 a.m. on day 3 at this point and we have 2 free periods coming up at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. We also are only here 3 more days. Jack tells my brother and I he'll handle it and to not worry. He doesn't want us getting in trouble. So we say okay but if he needs help to let us know. He thanks us and we go about our day. Now at 4 p.m. all the kids get time to swim in the lake, read, make crafts or just hang out in their cabins. The lake and crafts are at the bottom of this gigantic hill while the cabins are at the top. I didn't notice then but Jack was nowhere to be found for the entire hour we had for free time. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that night that I found out where Jack had been. As everyone was getting ready for bed, the kid who was bullying John laid down to sleep. Everyone had already noticed the room smelled, but no one was sure why. The kid, from what I heard, apparently laid his head down on his pillow, and felt something odd. So, without even looking, he reached into his pillowcase to try and find out what it was and pulled out a heaping handful of pure brown nastiness. He then realized the underside of his pillow and bed sheets were stained the same color. Obviously there was then screaming and crying afterward. An emergency meeting was called and all the boys gather in the dining hall. The counselors set out to find the perpetrator. Now, at this point I'm fully expecting Jack to just give up and admit what he did. He has always been a very honest guy, after all. He admits his mistakes. My brother, John, and I all immediately knew it was him anyway, and this is pretty serious. The counselors are also not joking around about this. The normal method for dealing with this involves getting all the guys in the mess hall, making everyone put their heads down, and then asking the perpetrators to raise their hands so they could talk to them at a more appropriate time without letting everyone know who did it. However, if no one admits to it, everyone is confined to their rooms for the rest of the week during free time. This has happened in the past, and if the person who did it doesn't come forward, normally someone else throws them under the bus. This time is different though. This time, the counselors are threatening to get parents involved and to cut all fun activities for the week if the perps don't fess up tonight. We were told that we had till midnight or everyone would be sent to bed and breakfast wouldn't be happening tomorrow till someone spilled the beans. So, as I expected and later found out, Jack raises his hand. Shockingly though, not only did Jack raise his hand but 11 other guys raised their hands with him. Remember how I said the kid had pulled out a handful of pure nastiness? That wasn't even close to the amount of actual crap in his pillowcase. These 11 other guys had somehow got wind of what Jack had done and had helped him out with it because they hated this kid from prior years and Jack was good friends with most of them. The jerky kid had a bad reputation and a few enemies. All 12 of them had emptied whatever they had in their guts in the poor sucker's pillowcase, and this wasn't just any mess. You see, another tradition at this youth camp was to ruin the guys' toilets by the end of the week. The only rule was you had to do it by pooping. No cheating. There was a row of 12 toilets in a long bathroom for the guys. You had to walk about 40 feet from the cabins to get there. And my specific friend group, made up of about 8 guys total, had 6 who honored this tradition. I never took part in this, but Jack and my brother did. And to say the least, they could crap a toilet out of commission if they tried hard enough. The record was 11 toilets out of 12 all down at one time over all the years there. And while my brother held the record of the most toilets broken, Jack was third in the friend group. These men knew how to poop. A lot. Now, at this point I'm obviously concerned. I'm near certain Jack and these other guys are gonna get thrown out of the camp because you can't just do that to somebody. 13-year-old me is terrified thinking that the cops or something might even get involved, and who knows what else would happen to Jack. Once we're back in our rooms, I text Jack and ask him what he's gonna do, as it's lights out, no talking time. Jack texts me back and says that from the get-go he planned to fess up, but he had no regrets. If they're gonna kick him out, he was at least gonna make sure the bully got what he deserved. The meeting happened the next day after breakfast for all these guys. I wasn't exactly sure at the time what went down, but a few older counselors pulled these guys and Jack into the camp head's office and discussions of punishment ensued. However, Jack got lucky. Jack is very charismatic and one of the kids who had helped place that brown atrocity was pretty quick-witted. So while talks of banning these 12 kids from camp is being thrown around, this smart kid basically tells the counselors this is their own fault for not banning that jerk in the first place. The track record this kid had was known to the counselors. And though they didn't like the kid, they couldn't do much aside from give him warnings and then send him home only for his parents to return him next year for another week of him picking on kids. They'd wanted to ban the kid before, but because they, apparently, only had word of mouth and not really any proof, they couldn't take that step without making it look unreasonable. All 12 more or less argued that this was ridiculous, as all 12 of them had witnessed or been bullied by him in some shape or form, and it was either they lose 12 kids or get rid of one because they weren't coming back next year if he was. Now back then it was about $200 per kid coming to camp. And obviously losing $200 is preferable to losing $2,400 and maybe more if parents sided with their kids. Despite the nasty method they used, these kids were trying to prove a point. And prove a point they did. Evidently, this argument was enough to sway these leaders into deciding protecting that little jerk wasn't worth it. The bully got sent home and banned. I never saw the kid again for the next 5 years. I went to youth camp. They all still lost their free time for the rest of the week, but none of them cared one bit. None of them were sent home. To this day Jack is still proud of this and will brag to anyone he meets about the time he defended his brother's honor by shitting in some poor schmuck's pillow. He has many other stories aside from this one which I may share in the future, though a good chunk of them deserve to be on other subreddits. TLDR, his brother got bullied, so my friend and a few other guys pooped in the bully's pillowcase. Then somehow got a light punishment and the bully banned.